Hey there YouTube, welcome back to Artichoke Dip. My name is Rob, solo RPG gamer enthusiast. And what we're going to talk about is Runequest. I want to run through a basic battle and show you how great the system is. Now before we get into this, I did make a short 9-minute video about the history of Runequest. Runequest is a game system with a very rich history to it. And I really highly suggest that you watch that video to get caught up if you're interested in Runequest and learning more about the history of it. Now, as I did say in my last video, I was waiting for this one to arrive, and I had already had this book right here. Now, I am unclear as to whether this is the 4th or 5th edition. I want to say it's probably the 4th. And if any of you guys out there know, leave it in the comments. It'd be very much appreciated. I've looked through this book and I can't find any indication as to what edition this actually would be. So, or maybe I'm just not looking in the right spot. But anyways, let's get the video started. And if you like my video, click that like button. Or hit the subscribe button and the little bell to get notified of my latest videos as they are uploaded. So let's talk about Runequest, what I like about Runequest, the two systems, and then we're going to get into actual gameplay so you guys can see how the combat system works. But there's a few things that we have to cover first before we get to that point. So the first thing is, let's talk about these two systems, the differences between them. Well, they're both Runequests, the histories are the same, and for most part the game systems are the same. This one though, however, is has more of a feel of a throwback to like a Dungeons and Dragons or basic fantasy because it does utilize character classes and gives you a more, how can I put it, templated framework to actually operate within. And you are somewhat limited to your character options by those character classes because every character starts with a basic set of skills, and whichever character class you decide to choose, you get additional skills to add to your list. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad game, because it's not. It's a great game, and I've had a lot of fun with it, and I'm just kicking myself that this thing has been sitting on my shelf for so long. And I loved it, went through it. The other thing I didn't like about this game, and it even explains in there, is that this is based on mostly a human world, and even this book is really designed for human characters and human encounters, and there would be other products that were going to come out to be able to expand to other character races and so on and so forth. Which kind of leaves you, like I said, in that tight-knit little framework of where to operate. Nevertheless, it's a great game. Don't think because of that sell yourself short, because if you enjoy those type of game systems, this edition you may love. Now, Amazon sent me a lot of emails and all these other, little push notifications like, hey, you should check this out, you should check this out, you should check this out. And I was kind of reluctant, and I read a lot of the reviews, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to purchase it to see what the hype is, because I really enjoy this system. What does this system have to offer? I'm going to tell you what, the reviews were right, and I'm probably going to go on there and put my own review on there, because I absolutely love this game system. And I cannot believe these words are getting ready to come out of my mouth. I better take a sip of coffee. Hold on. Yeah, those words are still coming out of my mouth. I cannot believe I'm going to say this, but I think Dungeons and Dragons may take a back seat to Runequest. That's how much I love this game system. So let's talk about this edition, the 2nd edition reprinting of Chasm's Runequest. First thing is, there are no character classes. There is a basic set of skills that every single character gets when you roll those up. Depending on your attributes affects those skills. So you could have a character that has a very high dexterous roll, and at that point they're going to lean more towards ranged weapons, like an elven archer. Or perhaps you have a human character that is, well, very strong and very good with a melee weapon, and at that point they would lean more towards a character. Or you could have a character that's extremely intelligent and understands the way that the mystical power of the gods operate within Gloranthia, and may become a rune lord or a rune priest, possessing high levels and powers of magic. Another cool thing that I love about the system is, like most role-playing game systems, you have magic in them, but magic is reserved for a few classes that can actually benefit from using that. And of course you do have other systems like D&D where you can have cross-classing, and of course you could have a barbarian slash sorcerer if you wanted to, but in this game system magic permeates everything, and every character is able to obtain the mysteries of magic, whether it be in the form of spells as battle magic or rune magic. It all depends. Now, as your character starts, each character has to belong to a cult. Inside the cult, there's a hierarchy. And there is a rune priest, and then ultimately a rune lord that oversees the cult, and at that point is able to distribute magic. So, I'm not going to really say magic. They distribute the knowledge of the ruins left behind by the gods. And from those ruins derives magic and their understanding of magic to be able to affect what they want. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Alright, so now, with that being said, there's a couple of game terms that I'm going to have to go through here and explain to you before we actually get into the game board and the encounter. Some things you have to understand. First thing is, this is a D100 system. So everything goes off of a skill base. All weapons have a certain amount of skill to them, and those are added up through your attributes. Your D100 are rolled. And if you meet that number of your skill set or below it, you succeed. If you go over, you have failed. Now on the D100, anything from a 0-1 all the way up to a 0-6 is a critical hit, which means it bypasses armor, which we'll get into that in a minute. And of course, anything from a 95 to 100 and above is a fumble. Now, this is my second go-through with this video, because the first time I went through, I was having so much fun with this that I had literally forgot that there was a camera going, and well, I ran out of memory, so I had to start this over again. And I'm more into the mindset of, okay, Rob, we're making a video. And so that's how much I enjoy this game system. It's a really good system, and I've really been having a lot of fun with it. And as for the solo RPG enthusiast, I think here in a minute you're going to see why. So let's get into the game definitions and how combat and magic and all that relate and work in Gloranthia. So, as I said before, everything is based off of your skill. Meeting or your skill percentage or below, you succeed. Now, with that in mind, after you have a successful hit, at that point you roll a 20-sider, and every encounter and even your character has a designated body part that has a number at that point denoted to it. So your head, your chest, your abdomen, your legs, and your arms have their own numbering system, and that's the point that takes the damage. Now, any one of those body parts are reduced to 0 hit points, the character and or encounter will die. But here is the snag. Any monster or encounter that you do battle with, if they carry a weapon, have an option to parry your attack. Now, every weapon has a hit point value assigned to it. If, for instance, let's say you are fighting against an orc, you roll your attack, and of course I'm just going to throw out an example here. Let's say that with all your bonuses you have a skill of 30, you roll 25, you have hit. But now the orc gets a chance at that point to parry. The orc rolls, and at that point the orc gets a 0-4, which is a critical. Now at that point, not only does the orc parry your attack, but he gets to roll damage that's deducted from your weapon. And of course, once your weapon or your encounter's weapon goes to 0, that weapon is broke and no longer is functionable in the game and has to be replaced, which adds a whole lot more to the game, and especially for solo play, that adds a lot into it, guys, and gives you a lot more to, well, a lot more to delve into. So you got the parry idea and how the attack works. And of course, now there's magic. Now with magic, there are, of course, your attributes. And one of those attributes is called power. And power is the character's understanding of the mystical power that is in Gloranthia. And it's a number system depending on how you roll it up, and depending, like I am using this. So I have one character that's an elf and one character that's a human. So depending on the skills, not skill set, I'm sorry, incorrect word. Depending on the dice allocated for the attribute roll will determine the power's attribute. So the higher the power number, the more spells you are able to cast. Each spell or ruin spell has a point system that at that point is attached to it. A good example, my character here has a spell ability to heal, which will cost him 1 point of power. Now if he wanted to heal, let's say 3 hit points to a certain location, and he has a power of 18, at that point his power would be reduced to 15. Now, of course, over normal time and healing, his attribute will go back up to its normal number, but that's where the beauty comes into the game, because any spell has its base number value in order to cast it. It's up to you how much power you want to put into it to do even more damage, whether it be destructive fire, mystical energy, or perhaps healing a friend. So magic is very simple, and of course there's resistance rolls, and there's many other aspects to this game. But for the sake of this video and to keep it simple, short, and straight to the point, this is what we're going to cover. So now that you understand that, there is the attack, there is the hit location that's rolled on a 20-sider, damage, and then at that point we go into which is called strike rank. Now strike rank obviously comes before the combat, but this is how strike rank works. There are 12 strike ranks per combat round. Now depending on where your character comes in, because they have a fixed value. My elf has a fixed value of 3, which means out of those 12 combat rounds, the elf gets to go on the 3rd, the 6th, the 9th, and of course the 12th. Now, this is very cool because per combat round, my elf actually gets 4 attacks. Even though his bow only has a rate of fire of 3 per combat round, he can still, on that last round, either ready his bow, take a potion, he can perform another task on that one before the next combat round. The same thing with the monsters. Each monsters or encounters have a strike rank that they have to follow, and it shows where they fall into the battle and how many times that they can attack per melee round. Now that may seem a little confusing, and the simplest way I can explain it to, like most RPG systems, they consider a combat round taking like 3 seconds in real time. Except for in Gloranthia, they consider it 12 seconds. Okay? And then 1 day in our time is 1 week in, at that point, Gloranthia's time for your characters. Now, of course, like any game system, you change things when you're playing solo to adapt to your game table, your likes, and what you like to do. So for me, the one thing I did change about Runequest is written in meters. Everything is in meters. Okay, I like feet, so I converted everything over to feet. And for the sake of this video, when I make it and I explain character movements and everything, it will be into feet. Now, if you enjoy meters and using meters, the game is already set up. But if not, it's very simple to do the conversion. And if you're not sure about that conversion, 1 meter basically equals 3 feet. There we go. Alright guys, I think we at that point have covered enough of what you really need to know. But I will highly stress, before you get into this video, if you have not watched the history of Runequest, I would watch that because it's going to give you more of an idea of what's actually going on here. And if not, then I guess you could watch it afterwards. Alright guys, so let's get into the game. And I'm going to put you down towards the game table. Now, before I do, I'm going to tell you this. You're going to notice there's multiple rooms in here. The first video I made was like over 100 minutes long, and I didn't even get to the last room. So for the sake of the video and the playthrough, I'm going to keep it to 1 room, maybe 2, to help speed things up. And in doing so, that way I don't forget that there's a camera there while I'm playing. Alright guys, so let's focus down here and take a look at the game table. Alright, as you can see, my characters are outside the door here. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can all see just a little bit better as to what's going on here. How's that sound? Alright, now you can see the whole room in view. So, as the story started, because I wrote this little adventure for the sake of the video, and what I thought would be a small, short adventure turned out to be a lot longer than what I anticipated. So I'm going to give you the quick backstory and give you the time. So the time in which this story takes place in the history timeline is 1627. Aragoth becomes the Prince of Satar. He has been on the throne for almost a year now, and peace is starting to return somewhat to the land, and the war-torn areas are starting to recover slowly. Now, there are 2 initiates. One, his name is Multic Stormmoon, and Multic Stormmoon is an elf, and he comes from an elven tribe. He comes from not extremely rich nobility, but somewhat on the poor side of nobility. And here is the elf right here. Now, with him, he also has an elven longbow that he uses, a scimitar, and of course he has leather armor that covers every part of the body, which gives him 1 armor point of protection, except for on his chest and abdomen where he has ringmail, that gives him 4 points of armor protection. And we'll get into armor protection here in a minute. The second character I'm going to introduce you to is this guy right here. His name is Alaric Faust. He is a human, and he comes from very rich nobility, and his starting weapons is a bastard sword, and he also has a light crossbow. And because he comes from rich nobility, he has chainmail armor that he is entirely covered with, and he also has an open helm. So he is very heavily armored. As far as spells for the cult that he is an initiate in, he has been granted 1 spell, and that is the spell of healing. Whereas with my elf, because my elf has been brought up in an elven society and inside the cult, he has 2 spells. His first spell is to detect spirits. The second one is Fire Arrow. And at any time, he can cast those spells rather than an attack. But we'll see how that really works out for everybody in the end. Pardon me, I just have to take a few things off of this character sheet because I am starting it over and can't really have this stuff because we have not found it yet. Little spoiler there. Alright. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this game system. So as you can see, the characters here are wading through water. The water is about waist deep. Now, medium-sized humanoid creatures can move 30 feet in my game, and because they're about waist deep, their movement is half, so they only get to move 15 feet. Wading through this dark ruins, they have come up to this door, which is locked. Now, every single character in Runequest starts out with an ability to be able to unlock locks called lockpicking. They both have 30%. So, what's going to happen is my elf, he's going to hang back here and ready his bow with an arrow pointed towards the door in case there's anything nasty on the other side, while Alaric tries picking the lock. So let's see how that goes. So let's roll our percentage die. Okay, a 109. Well, that is a fumble, is what that is. But he's not in combat, so it doesn't count as a fumble would in combat. So I'm going to say the tip of his dagger gets snapped off into the lock, and there might be a few obscenities, so he has to try to pick the broken chunk out. And I'm going to see if he can attempt again picking the lock. He gets a 49%. He is totally unsuccessful. At this time, he's going to ready his sword, stand off to the side, and he's going to let Maltic Stormmoon, my elf, see if he has any success at picking the lock. He eyes the lock and carefully tries manipulating the lock. Rolling a 35%. He has a 30% in it. He's just over it. The lock starts to begin to budge, but just does not want to give. And he's going to try one more time. 94%. He breaks the dagger off into the lock again. Wow. They're not going to have much choice, but other than to try to break the door down. Now, I'm going to say the door has hardness of 50%, and it's going to have 10 hit points. At this point, Alaric is going to start swinging at the door with his broadsword to try to bust it down. So, Alaric has an attack bonus of 25%, and he has 10% with his sword, giving him a grand total of 35%. So he has to roll a 35% or less in order to have a successful attack on the door. So let's see what he does. He rolls an 88%, glancing off the door, and he winds up again, swinging. This time he has a 38%. Close enough. Wood starts to splinter, but not damage yet. He takes another swing. A 99%. He gets nowhere. This time he rolls a 36%. I'm going to say close enough to do damage. Now, his damage, he has a damage bonus of a 1d6, and the sword does a 1d10 plus 1. So, let's roll those two together, and I said the door, there's a 50% chance of the hit points actually penetrating into the wood and busting it down. Not the hit points, but the damage. I'm sorry, the damage. Alright, so let's roll this up and let's see how this goes. He has a 14 points of damage, and as I said, there's a 50% chance that the door may withhold this, how do I put this, not splinter. Well, 0.9%. The door, at that point, the lock and everything splinters, and the door flings wide open. On the other side, which should not be so surprising to them, they have some company that does not look like they're very happy to see them at all. So, at this point, obviously nobody was surprised in this action because, let's face it, neither one of them could pick the lock, and they decided to just start beating the door down. So that kind of takes away from the surprise element. But as the door opens, they can see they are greeted by some very angry visitors. The room is also flooded with water. Movement is half. And, of course, what they can see upon the first assessment behind them is that there what appears to be a well. And I don't think they're really going to see much of this over here yet. And we'll get into that in a moment. Alright. So, at this point, strike ranks begin. Now, with strike ranks, and I already know this by the table, his sword length is 1.5 meter, or about 4 feet, and that gives him one extra point to strike rank. So he'll be running at a 4 strike rank. My elf will be running at a 3 strike rank. And I already know the orc and the goblins are running at a 12 strike rank. So we will start out with my elf first. And the elf, Multic's Storm Moon, has, oh, I love this, an attack bonus of 25% and 35% in the bow, giving him a grand total of 60% to be lethal with that bow. So now in the game system they say you have to declare who you're going to attack at that point, carry out the attack, and then after the 12 strike rings is what they consider bookkeeping, and at that point damage would be resolved and characters removed or counters removed from the board. So we're going to do that. I'm just showing you the version, a more simplified version of doing this. And let's get started. So, obviously my elf is going to target this orc. He rolls a 12%, which is a damn good hit. Now, Multic Storm Moon, his bow does 1d8 plus 1, and he has a damage bonus of 1d4. So, the next thing we'll do is roll a 20-sider to see where the hit location is on the orc. And then, of course, because it's not a critical hit, the orc still has the ability to try to dodge the attack. Because, after all, it is a melee attack, I mean, a ranged attack, not a melee attack. So the damage will be number 18 to the left arm of the orc. But, before we get into that, I'm going to give the orc the option to try to dodge. So, he does have a skill let me see here, of dodge 40%. Alright. So he has to roll 40% or lower in order to dodge. And if I minus the 12%, that actually bring it down to a 28%. So let's do that. Minus the weapon hit, he has to have 28% or less in order to dodge that arrow. He rolls a 31%. Not good enough, pal. Now I'm going to roll my damage. So a total of 3 points to the left arm. And he only has 3 points. So as the arrow pierces through his shoulder, cutting tissue and tendons in the artery, blood spurts forth and the orc cries out in pain as blood, or black orc blood, begins to trickle into the water and cloud out around it. The orc begins to become somewhat lightheaded from the blood loss. Now we move to his turn. He is a strike rank 4. He's going to take a step around the wall and attack him. Now, Alaric has an attack bonus of 25%, and he has 10% with the sword, giving him 35%. Let's see what he does. He rolls a 0-6, which is a critical hit. And with a critical hit, it bypasses all armor. Now, the only way that the orc here can avoid getting hit from a critical hit is by having a critical parry, which I'm going to roll right now. And we'll see if he can, with his scimitar, which he has 40% in, see if he can do a critical parry. 84%, no. So we're going to roll the hit location. 13. Hit location, 13 to 15, is the right arm. So right here, the arm that's sticking up. And his damage is a 1d10 plus 1 for the bastard sword. And he also has a damage bonus of 1d6. So let's roll this damage up and see what happens here. He does 10 points of damage to his right arm that only has 3 hit points allocated to it. As the blade comes down, it just severs right through the arm. And his arm flies off into the air as blood just spurts out. And the orc cries out in pain and shock. Okay, so that was strike rank 4. So we know these guys are all 12. They won't go until the end of the strike rank. So it goes 4, 5, 6. Time for my elf again. So we already know at the end of the combat, this guy's dead and this guy is dead. But before they die, they still get one more attack. So I'm not going to focus my attack on them. I'm going to go towards this little goblin over here. And I think I'm going to make a goblin shish kebab out of him. So let's do that. Sounds like a good idea, huh? So rolling my D100. All I have to have is a 65 or less. I have rolled a 40%, which is a hit. Now, it's not a critical, which means that goblin is entitled to a dodge. Now, he has a dodge of 50%. I had 65% for my ability, which I rolled a 40. So he has to have a 50% or better in order to dodge the arrow. He rolls a 44%, successfully dodging the arrow. And I'm going to say he moves this way, as jumping out of the way as the arrow as it hits the back of the dungeon wall. That sucks. Okay, that was strike rank 6. Now it's going to go 7, 8. It is his turn again. Now, even though the orc is still standing and in play, and we know he's going to die at the end of the combat round, he's still in the way, and I'm going to take another hit at him, just to see if I can remove another body part. So, once again, going back to Alaric Faust, he has an attack bonus of 25, and he has 10% in the weapon. Now, he did get a critical hit, so before I take the turn, in Runequest, I should explain this. There are no levels. You don't gain a certain amount of experience points to advance to the next level. When you successfully use a skill, such as combat as I did, you have the chance to roll your D100. Now, in that prime attribute that it's used for, obviously the sword, which would be my size and my strength, I have to choose one of those two abilities and roll my D100. If I equal that number or less, my skill increases by 5%. So I'm going to do that before I take the attack. Now, you do not have to do it that way all the time. You can collect money through adventures, go back to your cult, to your ruin lords, and pay them a lot of money to keep advancing your skills at 5% per time. Or you can do training and advance and attribute ability, which will ultimately advance your skills as well. But enough said, I'm going to see if I can advance my skills. So I have to have a 17 or less. I roll a 99%. No. So he does not advance in that skill. So now I'm going to take my attack. And I have attack bonus of 25, sword which is 35. He has a 48%. He misses his target. So that was strike rank 8. So now it's going to go to strike rank 9, which is back to my elf once again. My elf at this point is going to take another arrow shot at this orc, even though the orc is already dead. We'll just see if we're going to move another body part. 65 or less. Roll 62%, which at that point, that is a hit. Not an outstanding hit, but it is a hit. And of course, the orc is entitled to a dodge. It's got 40%, but I'm going to say because it is so wounded, I'm going to minus 10% from that and say he only has a 30% chance of being able to dodge the arrow. So let's roll and see where he comes in at. He rolls 47%. Pal, you ain't getting out of the way of that arrow. Now I roll the d20, 15. The hit location for 15 is the right arm. Wow, he already took out the left arm, now he's going for the right arm. Evil, I love it. Alright, I'm going to roll my damage up, 1d8 and a 1d4 plus 1. 4 points. So his right arm only has 3 points. So another arrow comes cutting across his shoulder, severing the other artery. So this orc is just bleeding out rapidly. Now, that was 9. So he goes every 4, 8, and 12. So now it's strike rank 12. Alaric will go first, and then all the encounters get their chance to go, and then the strike rank starts over again. Of course, whoever has been killed will be eliminated off the board. But Alaric is going to take another chance at hitting him. So, 35% or better. 35% or less, I'm sorry, less. He rolls a 25%, which is a hit. Now, that orc, just to be fair, even though it's losing blood and it's wounded, does get a chance to parry that attack. And it has a scimitar that it is using, and it has 40% in that skill. So let's see what happens. rolls a 96%. And no, as it tries to parry, the sword is knocked out of its hand. And where does the sword land? Number 1 on the hit location. That's going to be the right leg. As the sword's knocked out of the hand, Alaric quickly brings the sword back down towards his right leg. Delivering 8 points of damage. And his right leg only has 4 points. So his leg has literally been severed from his body, and blood spews forth as the orc falls off balance. Okay, it is now strike rank 12. Now, they do get their chance to attack before that strike rank ends and everything's removed from the board. So, with him being off balance, and he has 40% to his scimitar, I'm going to half that and say he's got a 20% chance to, well, no, he does not, because the sword was knocked out of his hand, so he doesn't even get that. He'll get an unarmed attack, if he can even do that. And let's see here. He's got a 30% chance for an unarmed attack, but for the fact that he's off balance, I'm going to say he has a 10% chance if he can even get that. He's just going to have to roll excellent. And he rolls 91%. He, pretty much, as he tries to attack to defend himself, falls backwards, and all the life leaves his body. This orc, which is, basically bleeding out, will advance towards my elf, and he still does have his sword, but he has both of his arms even though he's bleeding out. I'm going to deduct 10% and say he's got a 30% chance of striking the elf. He rolls a 51% and misses wildly, and at that point he no longer has any life left in him to continue on, and he drops to his knees, and then at that point falls face forward, disappearing into the water below. Alright, now it's time for the goblins. The goblins will advance up. He'll move up 5 feet. He's going to come out of the shadows. 5, 10, 15, move here. And both of them are going to attack with a short spear. Now, with their short spear, they have a 45% chance of success. So let's see how they do. The first one is against Alaric here. He rolls a 78%. He misses. He rolls against my elf. He rolls an 82%. Both goblins have missed horribly. And now, at this point, the strike rank is over and a new strike rank begins. Now, there's obviously no point. I've already made this encounter up for bookkeeping. Both orcs are dead. The goblins haven't been touched, so a new battle round begins with the elf. And he's a strike rank 3. Now, obviously, as close as he is to this goblin, he's going to back up and, at that point, ready his weapon for his next attack. I hope it works out that well, but there's really no sense in trying to hit him next to here, because I'm still within his range of being hurt by him. So now it's going to go to the next strike rank, which is going to be Alaric. Alaric is going to swing his sword at that goblin. Now, if you remember, Alaric has 10% with his skill in the sword, and his attack bonus is 25. Get him 35%, so he has to have 35% or better. He rolls a 99%, which is a fumble. And Fumbles are horrible. Fumbles are bad. Let's see how bad really is. Let's go to the fumble chart. Now, the first time I played this, he fumbled and it did not work out well. He actually decapitated himself. Don't ask, it's a long story. Alright, let's get to the fumble chart. I'm just not looking forward to the fumble. 19%. That's not too bad. Lose next attack, parry, and any defense bonus. Okay. Well, so basically, my next turn I can't attack, and when he goes to attack, I've lost my ability to parry and or defense, because you also get a defense bonus as well to your roll with your parry. So, alright, moving on, we'll go to the next strike rank, which is my elf, and my elf is going to try to take out that goblin. And let's hope this goes well. And, alright, I guess I'll search for that damn dice later. Underneath the table it went, I'll just use this set. 65 or less. 77. I have missed. Ooh. Alright. So that was strike rank 9, and he goes every 4, 8, and then 12. So now it would be his. Now we're going into strike rank 12. So he gets every 3, 6, 9, and 12. But he doesn't get an attack. He can, at that point, ready a weapon. I think at this point, I'm going to use a spell. And Maltic Storm Moon is going to cast Fire Arrow, which has a range of 240 feet. Its duration is instantaneous. And let me get to the magic section, because I believe the flame arrow does an additional 1d6 damage, but we're going to find out here real quick. Flame Arrow. This spell creates an arrow of flame which does 3d6 points of damage if it hits. It is cast on an ordinary arrow which is consumed by the fire. If it is fired at an enemy, damage is reduced by armor. The fire arrow will last for 1 melee round for 12 strike ranks, basically. It cannot be reused since it continues to burn. Alright, 3d6 on top of the damage that I already do. Cool. Alright, guys. So, he has used his last round to cast Fire Arrow spell. He's going to use his last round, but he has lost it because of the fumble. He cannot attack, parry, or anything. So his best option at this point is to get out of the situation and limit himself away from any threats. So I think, actually, I'm going to drop him back to here to where there's this bit of dry land. Now, it's the Goblins' turn. The Goblins advance. So this guy's going to try to advance at my elf, and he comes around the corner to advance at him. They both have a 45% chance to be successful with an attack. So we'll go with him first. He has a 17%. That's a hit. The thing that stinks is my guy cannot parry this attack this turn because of his fumble. And a 6 on Alaric is his left leg. And the spear does 1d8 plus 2 points of damage. So he takes 3 points of damage to his left leg, which he has 7, but here's the cool thing. He is wearing armor. So his legs has an let me see here, will absorb 5 points. So essentially the spear does no damage. The armor absorbs all the points of damage. So he is good. He's going to try to attack my elf. He has to have 45% or less. He rolls 29%. Okay. Now, I can try using my bow to deflect the spear, which that's what I'm going to do. I would be stupid not to. So, Maltic Storm Moon. His basic parry bonus is 15%, and he has a damage bonus of plus 1d4. I'm sorry, defense bonus of 25% and a 15% parry bonus, which will give him a total of 35%, along with his bow, which is another 35%, that's going to be 70% or less to, at that point, parry the attack from the spear. So let's see how he does. 97%. He failed miserably. The spear at that point made it past the bow, and because he did roll higher, the spear does damage to the bow, which does 1d8 points. It does 6 points of damage. His bow only has 10. So the bow has been severely damaged, and that's not good. And he still takes damage from the attack, which is just freaking horrible. Alright, hit location. Let's see where the spear landed. 16. His left arm for 4 points of damage. He does have leather armor that absorbs 1 point, so he will take 3 points of damage to his left arm. He has 6 hit points in that area, so at that point he is bleeding and wounded, but still alive and in the game. Alright, so that ends the first melee round. Going into the second melee round. Actually, this is the end of the second melee round, going into the third melee round. And he'll have the first strike rank. Now, I'm just going to fire my bow right here, right at him. I don't see any sense in moving and putting this off any further. So, at this point, I have to deduct 2 points of power for my spell, and then roll my 65 or less for the flame arrow to work. I roll a 15%. That is a hit. Fortunately, it's not a critical hit, but it is a hit, and as close proximity as this goblin is, does he get a dodge chance? Of course he does. And he's got a 50% to dodge the attack, minus the 15% of the bow, so that's going to take him down to 45% or less. He rolls 37%. He, at this point, believe it or not, is able to successfully dodge the arrow. The arrow takes off across the dungeon, and as it leaves the bow, it erupts into flames and leaving a trail of fire behind it. Unfortunately, there should have been a goblin on the receiving end of that. Okay, next strike rating is Alaric. Alaric is going to attack that goblin. He has to have a 35% or less in order to do so. Let's see how he does. He rolls a 75%. He misses his intended target. And at that point, our next strike rank is going to go to the elf again. And we'll be at number 6. The elf's just going to, at that point, aim at that goblin. And I want to take that goblin out. That goblin has to die. 26%, which is a hit. But the goblin at this point gets to take a dodge skill check. So he'll have to have a 24% or less in order to successfully dodge that attack. He does not, coming in at 36. Going to roll the goblin's hit location. Number 2, which is his right leg, receives 7 points of damage, and his right leg only has 4. So as the arrow, even though it's not a flame arrow, I'm kind of bummed out about that, but the regular arrow, as it comes off the bow, just slashes his leg, slashing through muscle and tendon. And the goblin at this point, bleeding profusely, is trying to hold his balance in the water as nasty putrid goblin blood is starting to just float to the top of the water and intermingle with everybody in here. Alright, and that was strike rank 6. So now next is Alaric. He gets to go again. And let's hope he has a 35% or less this time. He has rolled a 54. He has missed. And the last attack goes back to my elf here, which we already know. This goblin is dead, but he's still engaged with them, so I'm going to attack him again for 65 or less. 11 points. Not a critical, but that's going to be hard to beat. Now, with the goblin having a bum leg, his dodge at that point is going to be half to 25. On top of that, minus the 12%, which is roughly going to take him down to 13% or less in order to dodge this attack. He rolls a 17. There's no way he's getting out of this. The arrow, once again, strikes the right leg. Dealing an additional 5 points of damage. So another arrow right above the first wound mark comes through, severing the other half of his leg and muscle tissue. His leg at this point is just useless without any tendons, and the goblin at that point falls off balance, trying to balance himself on his spear from falling into the water and drowning. His eyes begin to grow very dim as he's extremely weak from blood loss. Alright. Now we're going to go into the last and the 12th, which at that point he gets one action because he's already used his 3 rates of fire for his bow. So what I am going to do is I'm going to take another step back, and I'm going to cast Fire Arrow again on this arrow. And that will take effect next turn. And let me get to my, it's going to cost me 2 points there. So I'll just deduct that now. Alright. Now it's Alaric's last turn before the goblins go, and hopefully he can land a good attack this time. So he has to have 35% or less. 71. And as they say, no dice. Alright, the goblin's turn. This goblin is extremely incapacitated, and I think it's needless to say, he's really not going to go anywhere this turn. This goblin's still in the fight, and he's going to try to attack him again. He has a 45% with his short spear, so let's see how he does. He rolls an 81%. Way out of the ballpark. Doesn't even get anywhere near him. And at that point, it's the end of that melee round. This goblin is off the board and dead. Starting a new melee round, which he will go first. At this point, he lines up a shot because he can see Alaric struggling with this goblin and take a shot on him. So with a 65% or less, let's see how I do. 54. Okay, that is a hit, but the goblin at that point, I'm going to say because he's engaged with him, he's going to get a 10... no, I'm going to half that. I'm going to say there's going to be... First of all, let's do it this way. He has a perception check. Let's roll his perception check of 35% or less to see if he even notices he's got an arrow being beaten on him and his comrade's dead. Okay, he does. He's seen his comrade fall, and in a split second seen him getting ready to fire an arrow. His dodge, though, because he is engaged with him, I'm going to give that half. So he's going to have 25% or less in order to dodge this attack. I can't believe it. He's got a 13%. That's just horrible. So he successfully dodges the attack as he rolls out of the way. The arrow goes off, and once again a wasted flame arrow goes off that way. Sometimes you just gotta hate how the dice are. Okay, so anyway, now it's Alaric's turn. Alaric will rush into the water towards him and attack. At this point, he has 35% or less to have a successful attack. He has a 43%. He is unsuccessful. Now, the next strike rank at that point goes to the elf, which will be his second turn. He's going to take a step this way and fire an arrow at this goblin. 77%. He missed. Wow. And it goes back to Alaric again, and now we will be into the eighth part of the strike rank. 32%. He landed a hit. Alright. So now, at that point, the goblin gets a chance to parry that with his short spear. Let's see how he does. Ooh, he fumbled. Oh, jeez. He fumbled. Isn't that horrible? Let's see what happens to the goblin. 56. He twists his ankle, loses half of his speed for 5d10 rounds. 5d10? Holy crap. Alright. We're just going to say he can only move one space. I doubt he's even going to live that long. But anyways, that was his fumble. And now I have to roll my hit location for the goblin. 6. Ooh. Oh man, this is horrible. I love how this game works out. Okay. 1d10 plus 1d6 plus 1. He does 11 points of damage to his left leg, same place that he twisted his ankle. So as Alaric hears the goblin screech out in pain as he slips, we'll say, on a wet stone, twisting his ankle, Alaric offers help by just, well, lobbing his entire leg off, and in one quick swoop just cuts right through the muscle, bone, and tendons, and blood spurts out as the goblin screams in agony and pain. as it falls to one side, gripping its spear, its little green slimy hands slipping on its own blood, trying to regain its balance in this flooded, blood-soaked, oozy area. Yeah! Okay, now he gets one more attack, and he's going to attack that bastard. 65% or less. 13%. That's a hit. I'm not even going to bother with a dodge because it's missing its leg. So it's just ridiculous. So I'm going to do the hit location. 18. Left arm. What are the odds? 8, 9 points. His left arm is only has 4. So as Multic releases the arrow comes across the arm that is supporting a majority of his body weight. The arrow severs through the tendon and muscle. The goblin screams out as blood spurts, and the goblin falls beneath the water from its state of weakness, of blood loss, I'm sorry. The goblin succumbs to its wounds and drowning beneath the water. Runequest. Never does, at that point, disappoint, does it? So, alright guys, got to show you an example of how the combat system works with Runequest and how this is really a cool game that you can use solo. And the thing about it is that the way that the dice fall, it is very equal and balanced, even solo. And even in a large group, I can see where this would be a really, really awesome game. I love this game, and I'm going to play a whole lot more of it. And I think what I'm going to do is try to run through the scenario that I actually wrote for the video again by myself and see if I can complete it. Because the first time, I did not make it. The first time, my fighter, he fumbled, and with a blood-soaked hilt of his sword, he lost the grip of his sword, and as it came around, he decapitated himself. And then the elf, he continued on, taking a few artifacts from the warrior to take back to the cult to give to the family members. And as he got into the next room, he found horrors waiting for him. And there was a ghoul in that flooded area. And ultimately, the ghoul had gotten a hold of him and ripped his left arm off and was just sitting there chewing on the flesh of his arm as he lost consciousness and passed away beneath the blood-saturated, flooded area where the ghoul was, with him standing over him, you know, eating the elf arm. Just so, anyway, that was Runequest, and I really can't tell you guys enough. For you solo RPG enthusiasts, if you're looking for a great game system, this is it. This is really it. And I know I've said that about a lot of game systems, and there are a lot of game systems out there that are good, but this one by far has captured my imagination, and it just held it captive unlike any other RPG system that I've played so far. And I love it, and I can't say enough about it. It's going to be real hard to move on to other videos and talk about other systems, but I will, because that's what this channel is about. But I can't believe the words came out of my mouth as to where Dungeons and Dragons may take a backseat to Runequest. Now, the one thing I did pick up for my game system was this right here, which is their version of the Monster Manual. Which, if you do pick it up, I highly recommend that you find it. And the cool thing about Runequest, what I can notice is it's very compatible, just like D&D, how you can get older editions of D&D books, and with minimal work and effort, you can convert everything over to the edition that you're playing at that time. Same thing with this game system. Now, the game system is pretty well straightforward and simple. They do make a Game Master's Guide, and let me see if I can find that. I know I had that out earlier. Here it is. They do make a Game Master's Guide for it, and actually more or less a handbook. It's kind of just gives you a little bit of insight into some areas, towns, and cities. Gives you a little bit more ideas on cults that you can create for your characters, and at that point, but all in all, unlike other game systems out there where they actually have a Game Master Guide that gives you a lot of tables and resources to use for the game, this really doesn't have it. So I would say you necessarily really don't even need this. I think if you were to pick up this, has enough creatures to get you started in the back, and then if you were to pick this up later on, you could add way more into your game and have fun with it. And I think with that, guys, I am going to end the video here. And, yeah, I'm going to get some gaming done with the Runequest. Now, if you enjoyed my video, press that like button. And, please feel free to subscribe, hit the little notification icon, and you will be notified when I upload my latest video. So, with that, guys, enjoy your Sunday, enjoy your gaming. I hope you found this video informative, and I hope you can see how the combat works out and why I love this game so much. So with that being said, guys, I think I'm going to end it, say goodbye, and I'm going to go about gaming. Alright, guys. Talk to you later.